welcome you here today on behalf of the Lyon family and the church here in Westerlo for a memorial service for Pastor Allen Lyon. Now, as many of you may know, and that's why you're here, it was a life centered on the gospel. And so as we hear from individuals today speak, you are going to hear about the gospel. And it would be no other way today to remember a servant who loved the people and loved the story of the gospel. And so we gather here today to remember a life of Pastor Allen Lyon. Now, many of you may have stories to tell or things that you would like to say to the family. There is an opportunity out in the ark. There are 2 tables with pictures. And on one of those tables is a stack of note cards and pens. Please take the opportunity to write down your comment, your story, or your favorite saying from Pastor Allen Lyon. Those will be hung up on the wall. There's some scotch tape there if you want to go ahead and do that. But this is your opportunity to share with the family the love that you had and maybe some of the stories that you had for Pastor Allen. And again, I wanted to welcome you here in the name of the Lord. Our first speaker has come from Rockwall, Texas, here to present Pastor Don's eulogy. It is his niece, Hattie Bursler. Thank you.
Good afternoon. First of all, on behalf of our entire family, I'd like to wish you a heartfelt thank you for the outpouring of love, support, serving, providing, feeding, transporting, accommodating us all during this difficult time. This truly is a wonderful community who demonstrates the love of God in not only what you say, but also in what you do. So now, the story of Donald Lyon is written by his son, my cousin David. Donald Allen Lyon was born on August 8, 1940, on his grandmother's porch in Matamoros, Pennsylvania. His dad, Robert, was a Navy veteran and fire chief of his local volunteer fire company. His mom, Shirley, was a constant source of strength and encouragement. 3 years later, in 1943, his sister Judy was born. This would form the family that he loved so much. It was in the first grade that he first met Ruthie Jewett. Little did he know then that his simple childhood friendship would last the next 72 years. Young Donnie loved to play sports. He was on his high school soccer, basketball, and baseball teams. He was popular with his fellow students with his magnetic and friendly personality and, oh my gosh, his smile. Growing up in the Methodist church, Donnie was active in the church choir and youth group and would often assist his elderly pastor, Reverend Roby, by preaching on Sundays. One winter day, while ice skating on the frozen Delaware River, Donnie noticed that there was something different about his friend Ruthie. When he asked her about it, she simply replied, Jesus. After accepting Ruthie's invitation to go with her to a Youth for Christ meeting in Port Jervis, New York, Donnie gave his love to Christ. He would later serve as a lifeguard at a Christian camp in Perth, New York, and it was there that he vowed to serve God for the rest of his life. A local pastor, Reverend Robert Foster, and his young leader, Mary Ellen Mahoney, were a constant source of spiritual encouragement and support for many years to come. After graduating from high school, he enrolled in the Philadelphia College of Bible in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where he would meet lifelong friends Robert Hannay, Marilyn Hannay, and Marilyn's younger brother, Rick Stark. Don and Ruth both graduated from different colleges in different states, but then returned to their hometown in Matamoros, Pennsylvania. After spending time serving together in their local church and deciding that it would be a great idea to marry each other's best friend, they were joined together in marriage in June of 1964. And at the age of 3, I was the flower girl at their wedding. From then on, I knew Donald Lyon's Uncle Don. working as summer camp staff at the Word of Life Ranch in Scream Lake, New York. Sorry, I'm all blurry right now. After the summer was over, Uncle Don and Aunt Ruthie headed across the country to Denver, Colorado, where he attended Denver Theological Seminary. As a graduate student, he served as pastor, youth pastor, and janitor at the Hoffman Heights Baptist Church of Aurora. During this time, their first child, David, was born. After graduating from seminary, the young family moved back east to Barrington, Rhode Island, where Uncle Don would serve as youth pastor there under his new mentor, Reverend David Madeira, who encouraged him to keep spiritual truths simple and understandable as he preached and taught. And during this time, their second son, Stephen, and their daughter, Deborah, were born. Now a family of 5, Uncle Don accepted the call to minister at the Second Baptist Church in North Stonington, Connecticut, as their senior pastor. At 30 years old, he already had over a decade of experience in pastoral ministry. He loved the congregation there, and they loved him. He and Aunt Ruthie fully expected to live a long life ministering to that community and encouraging them to continually grow in their faith in Christ. But then in 1974, Uncle Don and Aunt Ruthie attended a missions conference where they were challenged by the keynote speaker as he asked, "Would you be willing to consider a new ministry?" They each prayed and then shared with each other that they would be willing to give up what they had and would do so if asked. And at 7 o'clock the next morning, they received a phone call from Uncle Don's college friend, Bob Hannay. After a friendly greeting, Bob got to the point and simply asked, "Would you be willing to consider a new ministry?" And being true to his word, Uncle Don met with and spoke to the members and leadership of the Westerlo Baptist Church on 2 different occasions. And after 2 weeks, they formally asked him to move to New York State and become their pastor. So after a tearful goodbye to his beloved congregation in North Stonington, Uncle Don moved his family into the white parsonage next door to the church on October 4th, 1974. He would preach his first sermon from this very pulpit 2 days later on October 6th. Uncle Don threw himself wholeheartedly in the work of his new ministry into the congregation here in Westerlo. This community responded back with their love and support, and many, many, many lives have been touched with the life of Christ as a result. Uncle Don had a heart for the youth of his community, and he could be seen in the art of playing basketball and encouraging young people to live a life of love and service to both God and mankind. He loved spending time with his pastor's pals and mentoring the young men and women in his college and career group. Whenever Uncle Don would have a chance to preach or speak in front of a group of people, whether it was here on a Sunday morning, at camp, at your wedding, or your loved one's funeral, he always made sure that he presented the good news of Jesus in a way that everyone in the room could understand, and then gave anyone who wanted a chance to respond. During his time as executive director of Camp Pinnacle and Albany Bible Institute, Uncle Don was able to share his message of faith and encouragement to over 200 congregations in the Northeast. Thousands of young people and adults from literally all over the world came to Camp Pinnacle for camps, retreats, conferences. He became a teacher and mentor to many pastors and leaders in the Capital Region through the Albany Bible Institute. In 1991, he returned to his pastoral ministry here in Westerlo, and after a devastating fire destroyed the historic church building, both he and many members of the congregation were able to share their faith and hope in Christ on multiple local newscasts as a witness of God's grace and faithfulness.
In this rubble, 167 years of joy and sorrow, a church where villagers celebrated birth and mourned death. For the tiny hamlet of Westerlo, this death is not final. The Westerlo First Baptist Church swelled to 300 today. In the shadow of ruin, the congregation celebrates rebirth. Easter Sunday in a hall so close the fire rained down and nearly consumed it too.
We're so grateful for that building and it served us well. But God has some greater things in store for us.
But when the fire not of the future, but here for decades of memories.
We used to talk to him there. The time we went up on the West Wall building, all we saw was page 5. We couldn't get nowhere near it.
But this church would not perish.
It's so appropriate that it's on Easter Sunday where our risen Savior, he came up out of the grave, and as a church, we're going to come up out of the ashes.
And they surely will. On this Easter Sunday, they are, in a way, glad. It sometimes takes the heartbreak of tragedies to draw people closer together and forge new friendships that will last a lifetime.
It's just everybody coming together and working and everybody doing their part. It's just like a big family, you know, God's family.
And what of a new sanctuary? They expect it will take a year to build, but if enthusiasm powers the hammer, the bells could ring much sooner.
We're a very active church. We're active in the community, and we just can go on from here. We're not going to feel sorry for ourselves.
They do not. Amidst the Easter rejoicing, there is solace that from the ashes will rise a vibrant new life. Scott Young's 10 Eyewitness News, Westerlo.
And the enthusiasm, the shock is over. What is the attitude of the people now?
Well, I'd say it's still the same. People are still excited about what God is going to do. We have gotten over the fact that God allowed the building to burn. We know that. He could have prevented it, but he didn't. But now we know it's God's will that we move on from here and continue our ministry of sharing the gospel of Christ with anyone who will listen to us.
New home of First Baptist Church of Westerlo. What's happening?
Well, it's after 16 months of working every Monday night with the building committee, working with architects, working with designers, and you're seeing now the end result of all that hard work, and we're looking forward to having this building completed somewhere around Christmas time.
Was there ever a moment where you began to wonder if it was going to become a reality?
Oh, I don't believe so. We had this in our heart. We knew God wanted us to build this building. We're building it for the Lord and for this community. This community needs this church, and we were determined all the way.
When people saw the steel starting to go in the air, well, for example, last Sunday, what were people saying?
Oh, they were just totally excited and thrilled. Many came into town, saw the crane, thought maybe some of the steel might be up, but when they turned the corner, they saw the building already up, and they were thrilled.
Uncle Don will continue on as the senior pastor of this church for a total of 27 years, and in 2008 was designated pastor emeritus, which was a position he cherished and continued to serve for the rest of his life. Uncle Don was constantly offering wise counsel to us. That was us as in Dave, I think, and Stephen. Okay. Okay. Whether you were a couple considering the commitment of marriage, a young person seeking direction in life, if you were in a situation of great need, danger, or loss, he had time to listen and offer godly direction. Uncle Don loved to mentor anyone who was led into the ministry. He became known as the pastor's pastor, meeting weekly with local clergy in order to support and encourage them in their ministries. Uncle Don's later years were spent serving as a pastor, counselor, and mentor at the Capital City Rescue Mission, a place where he loved to spend time and serve. He loved and prayed daily for each man in his New Life program. He would be patient in their weaknesses and celebrated in their personal victories. Uncle Don loved to spend time with his family. He could be seen in his driveway on a Sunday afternoon, grilling a dinner for his grandchildren while they'd play frisbee and climb trees in the backyard. After dinner, he'd play with them and maybe catch a NASCAR race with David and Stephen, or a Yankees game with Debbie. I have very fond memories myself of Uncle Don at Yankee Lake, where we had a family camp. He loved to swim and play with all of us, and of course, go fishing on the lake. One summer, it rained the whole week of his vacation, but it didn't matter. He and Aunt Ruthie and their kids did everything they had planned to do, got soaking wet doing it, and remembered that special week together ever since. And fishing. If you've ever been fishing with Uncle Don and you weren't catching anything, he'd gladly give up his secret for landing largemouth bass. He would hand you a Kelly worm and say, "Here, try this." He He knew all the lakes and ponds in the hill towns. More than that, he knew where the best spots were for bass fishing. Suffice to say, if you went fishing with Uncle Don, you almost certainly would catch a largemouth bass. The bass boat was a special place for Uncle Don to spend time with his family and friends. It was a place for just you and him. No interruptions, no distractions. A place where you could share with him your life, your passions, your pain, your hopes, your dreams, your disappointments. He was always there to listen, encourage, and hold the net while you reeled in the big one. You're probably sensing a theme by now. No matter what Uncle Don did or who he did it with, it was always about you. Whether you were in his class as a student or building a tree stand in the woods, he was always more interested in you than what else was happening at the time. Uncle Don loved and cared deeply for everyone in his life. And Aunt Ruthie, she understood this from a very young age and was never selfish or jealous of Uncle Don's sincere love for everyone in the world. She was always there to support and encourage him. She never nagged him about spending too much time out of the house ministering to people. She realized how special and important he was to this world, and she was going to stand by him as he preached and demonstrated the love of Jesus in everything that he did. She would get to spend the last year and a half with him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doing what she's always done, faithfully supporting and caring for a very special man and the love of her life. On his last day in this realm, Uncle Don wanted to make sure that his wife knew that he loved her and his children know how proud of he was in them. And in closing, Dave's asked me to share with you the words that he spoke in those last moments and speak them to you this afternoon. I'm proud of you. Just do your best, let God take care of the rest, and I love you. Thank you.
Someone can only be all about others when they know the faithfulness of God, because they're always supplied by God. Pastor Allen Lyon knew the faithfulness of God. This was one of his favorite hymns, hymn number 43, Great is Thy Faithfulness. Let's stand and sing this together, God's great faithfulness to each one of us.
Faithfulness
Yes, indeed. You may be seated.
David, Stephen, Debbie, and family for allowing us to be part of Don's going home service. Rest assured, wherever we are at this hour, our thoughts and prayers are with you. We love you and love Don. Don Lyon was a humble man with a servant's heart, a man with great enthusiasm, saw the glass half full, and loved life and his Lord. His servant attitude was from a heart of love and gratitude. Don, Ruth, and family arrived in Westerlo October 4th, 1974. We're sure they never thought they would fall in love with the hill towns and remain in the area for 45 years.
Our memories are from October 4th, 1974 to October 27th, 2019. Don't worry, we'll not share all 45 years of memories, just a few. My first memory is from that October 4th day, 1974. Don lost the hubcap on his car while he's going through Dormansville on his way to church. We found it, and that was the beginning of our 45-year relationship as pastor and friend. Don was a very unique young pastor. He was always willing to help. In the 70s, I took a group of young teens to a basketball tournament at Perth Bible Church. Don went along to help keep the rowdy boys under control. He slept on the floor in front of the door that night to keep anyone from sneaking out. It was a weekend to remember. Don loved to serve his church family. He served the Lord anytime and anywhere, one-on-one or to hundreds, including preaching several sermons in 2 locations on Sundays.
We experienced this one stormy, snowy Sunday morning. We arrived at church for the first service, and at that time we had 2 services. As we entered the sanctuary, we realized there was only one other person, B.J. Kubinak, sitting in the last pew. So we sat down in the second pew with our 3 young children. Vera Farkas, the organist, was at the organ, and Pastor Don was sitting on the platform. He walked to the pulpit and did the entire service as if the sanctuary was full. Hymns, announcements, and sermon. Don loved to serve his community. I had several conversations with him concerning the seniors in our church and community. In town, there were many widows living alone, struggling with the upkeep of their homes. We would talk about his vision for an assisted living nursing home facility in Westerlo. Don envisioned it being built in the fields between Diedrich's and the town park. He said then the residents could walk into town. And from Don's community servant heart, he was one of the founders of Helderberg Senior Services. If a facility couldn't be built, the next best thing was senior services. As a teacher at BKW, Don shared with me his concern for women and their families experiencing difficult times, forcing them to leave their homes in the area for safety reasons. He didn't want the children to suddenly leave BKW and attend a new school. He felt it added to the trauma of the situation. His vision was for the family to have a furnished apartment in a safe, unknown location in the BKW district. From Don's servant heart, he was one of the founders of Helderberg Interfaith Safe Haven. One day, while teaching at BKW, a mother appeared at my classroom door. She was one of those mothers Don was concerned about. She needed a safe place for herself and children immediately. I told her there was help, and we walked to Linda Bergquist's room, who was on the Safe Haven board.
When you met Don, he was interested in you. And he wanted to know, is there any way or anything I can do for you? Any way he could help you? One year, the last night of VBS, there was a carnival on the front lawn of the church. And at that time, Don was the director at Camp Pinnacle. We were standing with Gay Newbegin and her parents, Jean and Joe Updike, who had recently fallen on hard times. They had moved to the area and they needed jobs. We introduced them to Don and Ruth, and during the conversation, Don learned that Jean had worked as a secretary/bookkeeper, and Joe could do maintenance work. It wasn't long before that that Gene was Don's secretary at Camp Pinnacle, and Joe had the job at Camp Pinnacle doing maintenance. When Don returned to the First Baptist Church, so did Gene as a secretary and Joe as a janitor and maintenance man. Don and Gene were a team for years, I dare say decades. Once again, Don demonstrated a servant heart. The last time we spoke with Don was on October 21st. As we entered the room, he said to me, "Cliff, we've been through a lot together over the years."
Later, as we reflected on his words, yes, we had been through a lot. As our pastor, he had been with us through many stages of our lives. Difficult times of trials and sickness, happy times, births, baby dedications, baptisms, graduations, and marriages. His final act of a servant heart for our family was to be part of my mother's funeral and committal services. Sunday, October 27th, as we were driving home from Philadelphia, we received a call that Don was not doing well. We drove straight to the hospital to find that he had been healed, but not healed on this earth. A chaplain had heard us asked to enter the room. He came in to pray with Ruth, David, and ourselves. After he finished, I shared with him how Don had always said, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Now Don had experienced the words he believed and had spoken to others countless times over the past 45 years. Today, Don is absent from his body and present with his Lord. And everyone said, Amen.
Thank you for all being here today. Homegoing of our precious pastor and friend, Pastor Don. Pastor Don was my pastor and mentor for 45 years. I first met him in 1974 and I was 19 years old at a Bible college student level. And the church I was attending in the local area was no longer preaching God's word, and I decided I needed to change. And I came to Westerlo Baptist Church. And that day, I don't remember totally, but I believe it was the day when they were candidating. It was in 1974. And I came there and I thought, wow, this is a great family. They had just come from Stonington, Connecticut, and a young family, and just getting a start here. And I thought, I was excited that a faithful man of God was now going to be my pastor. And for 25 years, we made this our church home. And Don was so faithful to mentor us and love us and to be the pastor that I always wanted. He was probably one of the most Christ-like men that I've ever met, right till the very end. He reminds me of one of the great biblical figures called Barnabas. Barnabas, which means son of encouragement, was extremely generous, patient, quick to give another an opportunity to succeed. And remember, Paul didn't want to take John Mark, and Barnabas said, no, we're going to take him. He might have failed, but he's got another start in him. And our Pastor Don always saw a fresh start in somebody, which is not always easy to see. He was a Barnabas. He was a humble, gentle giant of a Barnabas. Many of us, probably in this room, you could say, yeah, he came alongside of me. He could have been negative to me. He could have said, what's wrong with you? But that wasn't in him. It was always the Barnabas side of him that encouraged me over and over and over and over again. In my early days at the church, he helped me by having me teach classes, to preach. One providential evening back in, I can't remember how long ago, many, many years ago. I was just a 20-year-old kid. The youth group was going down to Capital City Rescue Mission because that's what this church did. And he said, come on down with us, we're going down. He said, and you're going to be the preacher for the night. So I said, okay. said, you do it. So I did it. And little did I or him know that in a while I would be the director from 37 years and still counting. And he mentored me that way. He encouraged me. And then when I went through seminary and went through Bible college, I could always talk to Don about all of that. He had been through both places. And he was an encouragement to me. And he, let me get my place here. When I came home, where else would I go? I had finished seminary, you know, you have your degrees and everything. You know, it's what's next? And I went to Don, and I said, what's next? And he said, well, I have two places for you. I have Fellowship Baptist Church in Skodak needs a pastor, and the Capital City Rescue Mission needs a group secretary. So, do you have a resume? No. Well, let's get one together quick. We got a resume together. He helped me. We put it out to both places. In about 6 hours, this Capital City Rescue Mission Board of Directors called me and said, we want you to come for an interview. Little did I know that the board had been talking, and they said, Don Lyon is recommending him. The board says, okay, that's done then. If Don Lyon's recommending